Hello, today we have Chapter 3, The Innocent Perception, Section 1, Atonement Without Sacrifice. A further point must be perfectly clear before any residual fear still associated with miracles can disappear. The crucifixion did not establish the atonement. The resurrection did. Many sincere Christians have misunderstood this. No one who is free of the belief in scarcity could possibly make this mistake. And I'm going to stop for a moment because I feel like I'm being told the crucifixion is a perception, and this entire process is about perception correction. So just having that pointed out to me, every experience is a perception. Okay. Let's see. No one who is free of the belief in scarcity could possibly make this mistake. If the crucifixion is seen from an upside-down point of view, it does appear as if God permitted and even encouraged one of his sons to suffer because he was good. This particularly unfortunate interpretation, which arose out of projection, has led many people to be bitterly afraid of God. So projection, we decide to hang on to fear. We project it outward. We see fearful forms outward. Okay. Such anti-religious concepts enter into many religions. Yet the real Christian should pause and ask, how could this be? Is it likely that God himself would be capable of the kind of thinking which his own words have clearly stated is unworthy of his Son? The best defense, as always, is not to attack another's position, but rather to protect the truth. It is unwise to accept any concept if you have to invert a whole frame of reference in order to justify it. And the accepting of concepts, that's up to us. All concepts are either from ego or from spirit, or we can be in a conceptless flow state from spirit, but we decide what concepts we accept. This procedure is painful in its minor applications and genuinely tragic on a wider scale. Persecution frequently results in an attempt to justify the terrible misperception that God himself persecuted his own Son on behalf of salvation. The very words are meaningless. I'm being stopped a lot today. I'm being shown that I am pretending as a body to be persecuted by God. That's what this earth experience is about, has been about for me. So it's just a moment of being very honest. All of this experience is an attempt to pretend that I am being persecuted by God, by some force that I think is outside of me. But when I remember, I have only turned away from God. And if you don't want to say God, just say the fact of our oneness with everyone and everything. The fact that we are created. I'm trying to turn away from that. Then I do see a world of strife. I'm projecting my fear out all over the place. I turn back to God in remembrance that I am one with God. I'm not going to be punished. I've never been persecuted. But here I have a whole past I'm remembering that seems as if, because I've been pretending to be persecuted, if you look at it from the perspective of different lifetimes, you could possibly see different lifetimes for yourself. I do sometimes. And I can see every lifetime was the same pretending, the same enactment. And one ingredient was present in all of them, me pretending. An experience proving my thoughts, proving ego's thoughts to me. And what is ego but something I invented for the experience of turning away from the oneness? Okay. Pause when I find my place. This is very much about claiming responsibility and stopping the pretending that anything has ever happened to me. I've made, with thought, anything that ever seems to have happened to me from the outside. And it's not for me to talk about anyone I perceive as else. And, well, you made what has happened to you. That's not my business. It's more my business to say, I have made with thought everything I have ever perceived. Okay, so from that perspective of taking responsibility for perception of experience, and the result, the seeming result of what never happened. It's not possible to not be one with everything. It's not possible to successfully attack the oneness, the Creator God. It's not possible to do that, but I am experiencing a fantasy of having done that. And if we look at the world situation right now, 2 countries in the news are Russia and the Ukraine. I wanted that, to claim everything in your life, everything perceived. I wanted a perception of attack. And to wake up and say, I don't want a perception of attack anymore. It doesn't mean we have to blame a separate self for something that isn't real. It does mean that I have to get to the root of understanding that I experience what I want to experience. I show up in the role of what I want to show up in, and nothing can truly harm me. So yeah, it's about getting down to that root, and whatever I see outside of myself that is a form of suffering, I have projected that. I have preferred to see that instead of what is real. So every day is for getting down to the root and finding the willingness to be shown under the surface of this fantasy what is real. This is really being emphasized and underlined for me. If I believe in the reality of attack, I believe that I can attack, and I believe that I can be attacked. And that's fundamental to this experience. It's fundamental. So once I start questioning that, I can attack, I can be attacked, ego is going to come up, and because I accept its thoughts, it's going to offer me thoughts that feel disturbing to me, but I think that if I accept its thoughts, I can maybe fix something or feel better. Or so there's a temptation when we get down to the root of what we have going on here to believe thoughts from ego. Ego is going to keep offering those thoughts because we've been accepting them. So there's a lot here. There's a lot here when we look at the perception of crucifixion. Okay, back to the text. Persecution frequently results in an attempt to justify the terrible misperception that God himself persecuted his own Son on behalf of salvation. The very words are meaningless. It has been particularly difficult to overcome this because, although the error itself is no harder to correct than any other, many have been unwilling to give it up in view of its prominent value as a defense. In milder forms, a parent says, "This hurts me more than it hurts you," and feels exonerated in beating a child. Can you believe our Father really thinks this way? It is so essential that all such thinking be dispelled that we must be sure that nothing of this kind remains in your mind. I was not, quote, punished because you were bad. The holy, benign lesson the Atonement teaches is lost if it is tainted with this kind of distortion in any form. The statement, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord," is a misperception by which one assigns his own evil past to God. The evil past has nothing to do with God. He did not create it, and he does not maintain it. God does not believe in retribution. His mind does not create that way. He does not hold your, quote, evil deeds against you. Is it likely that he would hold them against me? Be very sure that you recognize how utterly impossible this assumption is, and how entirely it arises from projection. This kind of error is responsible for a host of related errors, including the belief that God rejected Adam and forced him out of the Garden of Eden. And again, if we bring this back to ourselves, you always have that invitation. I turned away from the oneness. That's it. And then I pretended I could have a real life, imagining that I am separate from something. That's it. That's all this is. It is also why you may believe from time to time that I am misdirecting you. I have made every effort to use words that are almost impossible to distort, but it is always possible to twist symbols around if you wish. And in my experience, it's possible to twist those symbols around if I'm going to make it about someone I perceive as else, even God, and someone else's thinking instead of my perception, my emotion, as the signal of what thoughts I'm believing, my thinking. Am I accepting thoughts from ego, or am I accepting thoughts from spirit? This is what it always comes down to, again and again, always the very, very, very same thing in every situation, never an exception. Okay, sacrifice is a notion totally unknown to God. It arises solely from fear, and frightened people can be vicious. Sacrificing in any way is a violation of my injunction that you should be merciful, even as your Father in heaven is merciful. It has been hard for many Christians to realize that this applies to themselves. Good teachers never terrorize their students. To terrorize is to attack, and this results in rejection of what the teacher offers. Let's take a minute here, though, okay? Because we can twist the language of the Course to blame our separate selves. We can do that. So if every relationship is a teacher-student relationship, and every relationship and every interaction, one of the beings is teacher and student. The other being is teacher and student, always, right? So it says good teachers never terrorize their students. Well, this is talking about the crucifixion as a lesson. But I'm just going to any interaction you have ever. Because we're attached to ego, because I am attached to ego, I am going to experience many forms of attack, very subtle attack. That's what I'm learning now. Every thought I have is either an attack thought or a peace thought, and it doesn't matter how subtle the level is. There are no private thoughts, there are no hidden thoughts. Every thought takes form in some way, and so that's why it's really worth placing attention on our own thoughts. Nobody else's thoughts, just our own thoughts. That's it. And so knowing that every thought I accept from ego is an attack thought, and so I'm kind of attacking in an unrelenting way, okay? It's not real. I'm experiencing a fantasy, right? It's not real. But we cannot blame ourselves when we discover that we're playing at attack by accepting thoughts from ego, because we attack much of the time. We just haven't recognized it yet. We go down through the layers and we let it go. And whenever I'm focusing on the other guy attacking, I'm so lost. So lost. And that's okay, because I can be found again. It's always about what I am thinking. And if I'm accepting thoughts from ego about you, I am attacking. So if I see you as an attacker, I am attacking. And it's just about waking up from the fantasy of attack together. So if I could say anything, it's don't use the words of the Course to terrorize your separate self, because you aren't a separate self. You're actually a perfect being, and we're just waking up together. Okay. To terrorize is to attack, and this results in rejection of what the teacher offers. The result is learning failure. I have been correctly referred to as the Lamb of God, who taketh away the sins of the world, but those who represent the Lamb as bloodstained do not understand the meaning of the symbol. Correctly understood, it is a very simple symbol that speaks of my innocence. Also remember, innocence is shared. So if you think of all the characters who were supposed to be involved in the crucifixion story, and remember that innocence is shared right now. You think of all the characters that are supposed to be involved in your life story, and remember that innocence is shared right now. That's reality. If you look at all the characters that are supposed to be involved in the story of what's happening in the world, and you remember that innocence is shared right now. And if I'm seeing something other than that, it is because I wanted to see it. And that's okay, because I have all of the help in the world in emerging from that dream. The dream that I preferred to see. It's okay because I have all the help in the world in waking up from it. Okay. Let's see, the lion and the lamb lying down together symbolize that strength and innocence are not in conflict, but naturally live in peace. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God, is another way of saying the same thing. And let's remember that everyone is pure of heart. Everyone, as they truly are. If you're looking beyond the bodies and asking to see the beings, everyone is that one equal, perfect being. A pure mind knows the truth, and this is its strength. It does not confuse destruction with innocence, because it associates innocence with strength, not with weakness. So if we want strength for everybody, we want to see innocence everywhere, universally, and not try to hold some back and see evil somewhere else, because the evil I see somewhere else in the world or in my life or in anywhere in a past is evil I actually think that I am. So I'm going to hold on to that perception of myself as evil. What we can ask to do is to see everyone is innocent today. Ask to see their innocence. There's really nothing more important than that. Innocence is incapable of sacrificing anything, because the innocent mind has everything and strives only to protect its wholeness. It cannot project. It can only honor other minds, because honor is the natural greeting of the truly loved to others who are like them. The Lamb taketh away the sins of the world, in the sense that the state of innocence or grace is one in which the meaning of the atonement is perfectly apparent. The atonement is entirely unambiguous. It is perfectly clear because it exists in light. Only the attempts to shroud it in darkness have made it inaccessible to those who do not choose to see. The atonement itself radiates nothing but truth. It therefore epitomizes harmlessness and sheds only blessing. It could not do this, if it arose from anything but perfect innocence. And let's remember, perfect innocence is who you are. It's who everyone is. Under the story, under the drama that I preferred to see instead of who you really are, under that is your perfect innocence, shining. Innocence is wisdom because it is unaware of evil, and evil does not exist. It is, however, perfectly aware of everything that is true. The resurrection demonstrated that nothing can destroy truth. A story cannot destroy truth. And what we see as the events of our lives or other lives are stories that we prefer to see rather than truth. And a story cannot destroy truth. Impossible. Good can withstand any form of evil, as light abolishes forms of darkness. The form of darkness is always what I am asked to see, what I prefer to see, not because I'm bad, only because I'm confused. And I can always ask to see universal innocence instead of what I think I'm seeing in a story. The atonement is therefore the perfect lesson. It is the final demonstration that all the other lessons I taught are true. If you can accept this one generalization now, there will be no need to learn from many smaller lessons. You are released from all errors if you believe this. The innocence of God is the true state of the mind of his Son. In this state, your mind knows God, for God is not symbolic. He is fact. If you think about the oneness, God is fact, and all of the stories I have preferred to see in a past in a seeming present. They're just what I prefer to see instead of fact. And that's it. They're just what I prefer to see instead of fact. Okay. Knowing his son as he is, you realize that the atonement, not sacrifice, is the only appropriate gift for God's altar, where nothing except perfection belongs. The understanding of the innocent is truth. That is why their altars are truly radiant. So, what's the whole day for? When I feel off in any way, it means I'm believing a thought from ego. And this is keeping me in the perception of what isn't, never has been, and what never could be. That's what every not good feeling means. What can I do every time I feel a not good feeling? I can find one thought that I'm attaching to. I can take it to the inner altar, to the light. I can place it there. I can leave it, and I can find my willingness to be guided. I can find my willingness to be brought into clarity. I can find my willingness to be guided by Spirit. That's what every day is for. That's what every experience is for. Okay, so that was section 1. Thank you.